Here we are then, guys, ready for another episode of The Martial View. And this time we're joined with Ciaran McDonald, who has got a great background in Taekwondo and karate. He's also released some online courses during this last year and is also a martial arts author. So thanks for joining us, Ciaran. If you would just like to kind of introduce yourself and say what it is you do.
Well, my name's Ciaran McDonald. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And I am an enthusiast about bringing the lost and obfuscated applications of Taekwondo patterns, or kata, or tools as they're called, back into the art, enriching the art and giving people basically a way to just make their art sort of more street ready or self-defensively based. So yeah, that's the thrust of what I do.
Fantastic. That's a really interesting perspective on Taekwondo, because it's often seen as maybe just a sport, or especially like the Olympic stuff, or it's seen as more of a traditional martial art where you can learn the fancy kicks and it looks pretty cool. It's really good for flexibility, but it's not often seen as a self-defense art. So where do you think that's been lost?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, for a start, there's a misconception that Taekwondo is all kicking.
Yeah.
It does go that way because of the sport element takes it that way. The sport element, the rules are geared to show as many flamboyant kicks as possible. But the art itself is basically built on the kata, or the tools as we call them, and or hyung or pumse, depending on which Korean form you take. And those patterns are about 80% hand techniques rather than foot techniques.
Okay.
So the vast majority of them are based on old Shotokan or Shotokan karate kata, and they're basically chopped up. A lot of the repetition is removed, and then they've all been glued back together in a specific order, which presents us with 24 kind of almost unique kata. There's not much repetition in Taekwondo. And within those is basically a blueprint for how to deal with single opponents attacking you in pretty much any variety of method of a habitual act of physical violence you can imagine. And that has not been available to us because of the situation in karate. So karate basically hit the mainland of Japan in 1922, I think it was, 22, and it was brought over by Gichin Funakoshi.
Yeah.
And another couple of people, Miyagi Chojin, and the head of Shitoryu, Kenmon Mabuni, and people like that brought it across and started populating it there. And it developed into an art that was taught in the university systems. And basically what happened was, before it was taken into the university systems, it was taught in the school systems. Now, when you teach a martial art to school children, you can't teach grappling and strangulation and eye gouging and biting, and so all that stuff was removed.
Sure.
To make it safe for the children. But also, the classes were large. So originally, Okinawan karate was done in two-person drills, so very small classes, very small syllabus, based on 2 or 3 kata. That's all a master would know. And then he would go into that kata in great detail. They teach you all the applications from that, craft them into two-person flow drills, very much like you get in Kali or Screamer or something like that. You know, those arts where you're very hands-on with each other and it's very flowy. That's the basis of what it used to look like. But once you introduce that to the school system and you end up with hundreds of kids drilling in a playground, you can't do that work anymore. So the vehicle for progression became kata, solo drilling. And from that became the model that we inherited into Taekwondo. So solo drilling was the thrust of the art. And then later on, I mean, it doesn't take very many generations of that before you lose the understanding of what the actual rules of the kata were.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what happened. They lost it all. By the time it hit Japan, they'd lost most of what had happened, what the moves meant, and then also there was a heavy emphasis on the sports side of karate, because to become ratified as a Japanese art, entering the Buto Kukai, they had to satisfy certain criteria, and one of them was they had to develop a sports side of karate. So judo had all the throwing and grappling, so they didn't do that. And kendo and other arts had the weapons, so they didn't do that. So what they were left with was the punching and kicking. So they developed a sport based on punching and kicking. That became super popular, and then the training basically changed from two-person drills completely to sports training, sports karate, and that became one of the reason why karate was so successful all over the world was because of that sport, but also it's a double-edged sword, because that sport cost karate its applications. And when self-defense began to be viewed through the context of that sport, so long distance kicks and punches, people began to think that if they were attacked in the street, that would be how they would be attacked. And then consequently, when someone said, well, look, we don't know what any of this kata means, how are we going to use it? People began to retrofit applications based on the sport and based on the practice of kendo, where you start from a great distance and step forwards with a single lunge.
Yeah.
And consequently, that became the model that we inherited into Taekwondo. So that's always been our understanding of the patterns, is that the techniques are from single attacks from great distance, and you do a single block and then a single punch, which is great until someone grabs hold of you.
Yeah, were people not testing it as well in terms of going out or not going out, but in terms of people having real life altercations, perhaps, where you do get grabbed, it does get into a scuffle, it does get into a different range than what they're just training at the dojo? And did that then not, or did someone then not just think, oh, hang on, like maybe the range is slightly wrong, maybe we need to look at grabbing, maybe we need to look at punching more?
Well, in Japan, they got a very polite society where they weren't punching and kicking each other like the drunk British do on a Saturday night. Yeah. So they didn't get into as many altercations as we could. Also, the people that were being taught were university students, so there'd be like a class of people that wouldn't be out brawling all the time. So they didn't have any real, idea of what real life violence was. They weren't involved in real life violence all the time. They were so they couldn't test it. They couldn't pressure test any of it, and consequently, they have a system in Japan called the Senpai Kohai system, which is a system of hierarchical relationships.
Sure.
And so you've got the sensei at the top of the pyramid of power, and you at the very bottom, and you don't question him. You don't question authority. It's seen as a very disrespectful thing to do. And so consequently, if someone doesn't know what they're talking about, you have to just accept that. You can't.
Yeah, well, this is one of my issues, and this is something that I've talked about quite a few times with this hierarchical system of sensei, senpai, and kohai, and where you could be taught anything. You could literally be taught anything, and because of that hierarchy, it's like you don't question it. And this is probably where the no-touch knockouts and the throw in chi balls of energy and someone falls over. And this is probably where some of this bullshit comes from, to be fair.
It's
because
definitely.
They build it up into their own mind so much that it's like, oh, guys, just call bullshit on it. Like, what's going on? But obviously that tradition is important to keep, and that respect is obviously important to keep. But there's a limit as well where you've got to go, look, like, this is just a load of shite now.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you got to imagine the historical context. It was impossible. People didn't go and cross-train in the old days.
Yeah.
They would train within one art. Their sensei would be their sensei throughout life, and that would be it. And this perpetuated right up until the 70s and 80s. Yeah. And then where people began to kind of cross-train a little bit, bring in, because of the work of Bruce Lee.
Sure.
It was seen as you would see that your art was lacking certain things, and then you would go elsewhere, go and do a bit of wrestling or go and do a bit of boxing or something like that. But even still, it's very difficult to find out any information, because there was no way of transferring information around. Now we've got YouTube and we've got the internet, and it just seems crazy, right?
Yeah, the bullshit gets found out quickly.
Exactly. I mean, in jiu-jitsu, if you claim to be they use like jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, a new art, as you know, but I mean, they use the old system of dojo storming still. So if you claim to be a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
exactly, yeah,
they'll just come around and wrestle you.
Yeah. Those videos are always entertaining to watch. To my favorite pastimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great one of this big fella in a kind of wooden dojo in a park in America. he gets owned by. He's wearing this. Oh Christ! I mean, how could I don't? I mean, in modern times, I cannot understand how you would still do that.
No. Well, this is the thing with stuff like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's tried and tested. So people know it works. You know, you can't test it more than in the Vale Tudo, the UFC, the things like that. In a specific arena like that, it works against, it's been proven to work time and time again. But where the issue is with some maybe traditional martial arts now, such as karate, such as Taekwondo, it's not tested quite as much. What do you think about? Do you agree with that, or?
That's absolutely the case. This is one of my main. I love karate and I love Taekwondo. I love those arts. They bring so much that's more than kicking and punching to a person's psyche and mental well-being. So they're fantastic arts, but there are a lot of erroneous claims about being able to defend yourself using some of the traditional methods of training, such as the set sparring, where one guy stands at a credible distance, steps forwards with a lunge punch, and then you use your block and middle reverse punch to defend against him. That's just not the way violence works. No. We now know that, if anybody's been involved in any kind of real violence, they know that immediately. The vast majority of people haven't.
Yeah.
But we've got now YouTube. We've got YouTube, we've got the internet, we've got reality specialists
without having to get into it yourself.
That's it. We've got Jeff Thompson and Russell Jarmusch and people like that have done all the hard work, and they're saying to you, look, I know what real violence is. I'm going to tell you, you just got to listen.
Yeah.
And but the problem with Taekwondo and karate and arts like that is they're a little bit behind times.
Yeah.
They've missed out. A lot of them have missed out on the whole UFC thing. In the early days of UFC, there were multiple styles competing. It was a true mixed martial arts competition.
Yeah, it was style versus style.
Yeah, that's right. You'd bring your Taekwondo and you'd fight, a wrestler or whatever, and then the best man would come out alive.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long to realize that most of the striking arts could be negated very quickly by grappling arts. If the grappling art guy could get in close enough, then your striking was useless.
Yeah. I think most things that work in self-defense are now tried and tested, and most people know them. You need to strike a little bit, you need to grapple a little bit, you need to do a little bit of groundwork. If you've got that, you're probably all right in terms of self-defense for the vast majority of situations, because it has just been tried and tested so often now. And with things like karate, there seems to be the emphasis on the striking, but less on the grappling. And certainly from an outsider perspective, it seems like that with Taekwondo as well. So yeah, why do you think that's still the case with these traditional martial arts now? Is it just the fact that they are traditional martial arts? They want to keep that culture, that lineage, that passing down of things?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. That's very true. But there's a lot of people, there's just not the information available to people that there should be. So, for example, this is the main reason why I wrote my book in the first place, because there isn't the information within in the last 20 years. There's been a kind of ground movement, a grassroots movement within karate to bring back all the lost stuff, all the flow drills, all the joint locking and strangulation, all the throws, all the groundwork, all the nasty pressure points and gouging and biting, all the dirty fighting, all the stuff that you really need to survive exists in karate. And they didn't know that, but some pioneering people like Ian Abernethy and Patrick McCarthy did all that work and brought it all back. And so there's been a huge movement to change the way that karate is trained. So it's not just a sports fighting art, to bring back the real self-defense. That hasn't happened in Taekwondo yet. Taekwondo is a good 10, 20 years behind karate.
Okay.
And so my feeling is, if you don't want the art to continue to go down the path of being a sport, because a sport is very elitist, even your best sports person in the world has only got a limited amount of time at the top of their game. And once that's gone, well, if you've based your art around sport, then there's nothing else in the art for older people or out of shape people or people with disabilities, So my feeling is the vast majority of Taekwondo is being missed. The wealth of stuff that we've got is incredible. I mean, as I say, if you imagine in the old days, a master would only train 3 kata. They'd only know 2 or 3 kata. That would be it. And those would represent their entire system of self-defense. In Taekwondo, we got 24. We got 2 that are questionable. So we got 26 in total, 26 kata. Yeah. Now, if you studied those in detail and all the stuff, all the variations of each technique, that's more than one lifetime's worth of study. And we're not even addressing it. We're not even touching it in Taekwondo at the moment.
Where did the idea come from the book then? What decided to make you write it?
I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people within Taekwondo who, because a lot of people leave Taekwondo, they get disillusioned when they get to black belt and they don't find out what any of the patterns or tools actually mean.
Yeah.
So they go on a little journey of self-discovery, and maybe they'll come back to the art, maybe they won't. But that's what happened to me. I'm not one of those annoying people that has to know the answer to everything. You know, I'm the guy with my hand up in the room asking questions when everybody's looking at their watch trying to leave. I have to know stuff, and so consequently, like when I got to black belt, I thought when I got to black belt that the secrets of Taekwondo were going to be revealed to me
from behind the curtain. Yeah,
yeah, that's it. Or I'd see the stone, you know, tablets.
Yeah. The iPhone tablet now.
Yeah, that's it. But I didn't. I didn't. Nobody told me, and it took me a while to realize that nobody told me because nobody knew. My instructors didn't know because their instructors didn't know because their instructors didn't know, and because the guy that created Taekwondo in the first place didn't know either. He wasn't really trying to create an art full of applications. He was trying to create an art full of hard stone men of iron. You know, that's what he was creating, superhumans. So the training was based on that. But I had to know the answer, so I went on a journey of self-discovery. I studied lots of different arts, dabbled in this, dabbled in that. You know, went to various different courses and stuff. And then I found a couple of guys. I found Ian Abernethy first.
Yeah,
I was really impressed with him. His training, his attitude, his ethos, just incredible. And then through him, I found Patrick McCarthy. And Patrick McCarthy is the world expert on karate kata applications.
Yeah.
And he had all the answers to what the karate stuff was, all of them. And because karate, because the Taekwondo patterns are based on the karate patterns, if you know what's in the karate patterns, ergo, you know what's in the Taekwondo patterns.
Yeah, there's the link there, yeah.
That's the link. So I basically went off, I studied his system, I learned all the applications, I wrote a book based on them, I mapped them onto Taekwondo, so I would show the direct relationship between the two arts, and then I started teaching them. And so, you know, there I am now helping people trying to get the most of their art.
What has martial arts brought to you then? What's your main focus in martial arts now? Is it more of the fitness side? Is it more of the self-defense and application side? Is it more for your students and imparting that knowledge, or? Yeah,
I think it's, I mean, you know, I, like you, martial arts obsessive, so yeah, I don't know what I would do.
Losers.
Exactly. I'm the worst person to sit next to at a dinner table or in a dinner party because I was glaze over really quickly. But yeah, I mean, I love it. So I'm super enthusiastic about it. I personally, if it wasn't for the application side of it, I pretty much would have given up Taekwondo and karate and other traditional martial arts in favor of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where there's no mumbo jumbo. They tell you something, you try it, it works. If it doesn't work, you try it again until it does work. It will work because the guys teaching it, they know that it works. Otherwise, they wouldn't teach it to you.
Yeah.
Now, most instructors teach you their favorite techniques anyway, rather than a load of stuff that they've inherited from somewhere else.
Sure. It's
all battle ready immediately. It's pressure tested straight away.
Yeah.
So I would have given up martial arts in favor of that because that's a great system. But my feeling is now, I mean, a lot of the stuff in Taekwondo and karate, you can't really pressure test. You can't stick your thumb in someone's eye. You can only do that once in class. You run out of training partners. Yeah. So a lot of it isn't pressure tested. Like the three-day death touch and stuff like that. So yeah. So So yeah, so so there's a danger of going down the George Dillman no touch knockout nonsense route.
No, don't go there. My pet hate.
But I mean, you yourself, you've studied a lot of different martial arts, haven't you? How did you end up on Defense Lab?
Well, it was, I've told the story. I started off with Aikido and then did that for 20 or so years and got to third degree black belt, and then started looking at other things like MMA and boxing and started adding some striking in just because it was more pressure testing. It's the same. Aikido was done mainly on compliant people. And this is one of my arguments for Aikido maybe losing some of its relevance now, just because it didn't develop with the times. It's steeped in tradition and it's steeped in culture and steeped in spirituality, which is great for a martial art, but it's got less of the martial than the art now. And that's maybe a slight issue for people, but it depends, as always, what you want to look at. But then, I went to a mixed martial arts class, and they were doing KFM, which was the stuff before Defense Lab. And I thought, I kind of like it. It's cool. It addresses at least multiple opponents, because I don't think there is any answer to multiple opponents other than get the fuck out of there. But it at least questions it slightly and has a look, and then from there, obviously, it went to Defense Lab. And then they were professionalizing the martial arts quite a lot as well. And I always just had a dream of being a full-time instructor. So they gave me a route to do that, and I am. And then left them last year and set up on my own, doing Empower.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
So that's the main thing. But I'm always interested in the applications. I always have been interested in the applications of traditional martial arts into the real world, or I say the real world, into the modern world, I suppose. And obviously, what you're doing seems to be that link between the old and the new. So it's the theory, but it's practical as well. So it's definitely an interesting thing, I think, to study for any traditional martial art that's out there.
I mean, the thing is with it all, with your background, if I was to show you, so I mean, a lot of the kata are very difficult to understand, or the patterns are very difficult to understand because they're heavily stylized. But if I was to show you one with a wide array of techniques in it, you would understand what most of them were. You would go, oh yeah, because you'd be able to imagine another person in there, and you go, oh yeah, especially with your background in Aikido, because a lot of the throws and takedowns and stuff from the kata are very similar to Aikido techniques,
Yeah.
And also the small joint manipulations of wrists, fingers, and stuff, elbows. You'd be able to you'd see, oh god, I know what that is. I know what that is, immediately. Whereas people who've been studying traditional arts like Taekwondo or karate without that adjunct of knowing, of learning the applications, they wouldn't have a clue, because they would look at things through the perspective of blocking, kicking, and punching. They'd see everything through that perspective. Whereas once you've got a background in grappling arts, that you're able to understand things through that new perspective and see that the vast majority of the kata are based indeed on grappling arts, and don't deal with long range techniques, but do deal with people being grabbed, hair pull, bear hug, chancery, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on cross training now then?
You've got to cross train. Got to cross train. You've got to cross train, because don't get me. I'm gonna get shot by people for saying this. Like you hear, there is no complete art. There is none. All right. And people claim that they are. And the biggest advocators of this these days are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. And you will hear them talk over and over again about how their art is the superior art. But we know, you don't want to be grappling with people on the floor outside of a dojo. It's just simple as that. Number two, you cannot grapple with people on the floor if you have more than one opponent. You simply can't.
Yeah.
And number three, a lot of their stuff is based on getting in close. If you get hit on the way in, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And consequently, there are no MMA world champions in simply Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They all have to incorporate some form of striking and some form of wrestling, so that they can usually, basic wrestling is usually single leg or double leg takedown. But
strike a double leg into guard or whatever. Yeah.
But they have to incorporate that wrestling as an entry into their Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So to claim that it's the best martial art in the world is just not true, because it is if you add on those other bits. But then again, all of a sudden you've got a different martial art, right?
Well, that's mixed martial art.
That's exactly it.
That's not mixed martial arts. That's a mixed martial art, and I think it's important to distinguish between the two as well.
Exactly. And a mixed martial arts is great, but it isn't for self-defense. It's a gladiatorial pursuit.
Yeah, it's a sport.
The fact that there's a referee that's going to save you if the guy gets too out of order, and you two are going to fight to a conclusion. Whereas, as we know, in most self-defense, the idea is to get away, to get away and fight another day. If you're a policeman or a security guard or a self-protection officer or something, then you may have to fight unto a conclusion. But the vast majority of us, we want to get away and get someone in authority to deal with the lunatic, so we don't have to deal with that, right? But so MMA is not a self-defense. It's just because the ethos is wrong. The techniques are great, but the whole mindset is wrong. So yeah, there are no there's no panacea there. You just got to cross train. You've got to cross train.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. You've also moved online then, and you've done a couple of online courses. Is that correct? So.
Oh yes.
Was that a result of the lockdowns and things like that, or was it something you were thinking about doing for a while anyway?
Yeah, both really. You got nothing but time on your hands during these lockdowns. So I took the first lockdown and I created my online platform. With the help, with the help of Matthew Chapman.
Let me chat. Yeah, I was going to say, let me guess, Matt Chapman.
yeah. No, honestly, I signed up with him as a mentor. He's worth his weight in gold. He really is. He's a great fella, absolutely great. And his work is brilliant as well. His Mitmaster stuff is great. Yeah, I've got loads of it. It's great.
Same. Yeah.
So yeah, I used the first lockdown to set up the courses. I'd filmed all the footage beforehand for one of my courses, and then each time I come out of lockdown, during the lockdown I've been working on the next material. I shoot it really quickly because you never know when you're going to go back into lockdown. And then I come straight back in again, and then edit it again once we're in lockdown. So we've been in 3 lockdowns then. I'd say they've been quite productive, really. And
what the online course is focused on?
Well, the first one I did was I took a single pattern, a single kata tool called Jungun tool, which is has a 32 move pattern, and I pulled it apart and looked at things in what we call templates. So 2 or 3 moves pushed together will be like a response to an escape from something, or a block and a kick and a punch or whatever, although it tend not to do that so much. And then basically I taught all the applications from that and all the variations off, and then various different controls, ground controls or escapes from that, and then put it together in DVD. And also I grafted the whole thing into a continuous 2-person flow drill. So I put that's my first course. I built that, I put that online. That was live last year. And then I did 2 further ones. So shorter 2-person drills based on self-defense techniques taken from various different patterns. And then the latest one I did was specifically to help black belts, because one of my issues is that when you become a black belt in Taekwondo is very front loaded. You've got like a pyramid of learning where most of the learning takes place at white belt and then the lower grades. But when you get to black belt, there's not really very much to learn anymore. And really all that happens is between grades, I'm a 4th dan now, but really the difference between a 4th dan and a 3rd dan is 3 patterns. That's pretty much it. There are no more new stuff to learn. But my feeling is, you're either one of those people that likes to obsess about small details for the rest of your life, then that's a great thing, because you can spend 5-10 years obsessing about the performance of the patterns and getting them perfect, which is good. That's the whole kind of Do or Tao principle of it, introspection, improvement of character through introspection. But it's not for everybody. It's not for me, for example. I need new material. I need intellectual stimulus. And if there's no intellectual stimulus, I have to go somewhere else and find it. And I don't want to leave my art. And a lot of people feel that way. And so consequently, I'm devising courses specifically for black belts. So they've got a whole new avenue of study to stay intellectually stimulated and stay in love with the art that they first got involved with.
Perfect. Sounds great. Yeah. Where can people find you then? So if they want to grab hold of the book, or if they want to get hold of one of your online courses,
well, they can find me on my website. That's oldperspectives.co.uk.
Okay.
They can find me on my Facebook page, which is Old School Perspectives. Could be old school perspectives on Taekwondo. I can't quite remember, but I'm everywhere. So
I'll link it. I'll link it anyway.
Yeah, that's probably best.
Yeah.
It's like my phone number. I never remember my phone number.
Yeah. Call yourself very often.
Exactly. But yeah, so you can find me in there. I'm on Facebook all the time. So I'm everywhere. If you're involved in Taekwondo, I'm everywhere in Facebook. So you should be able to get me through that.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ciaran. Really appreciate it. That was really interesting. Definitely seeing the style, the development, and obviously the application and things as well. So yeah, good luck with the book. Good luck with the courses. Go and make sure that you check out Ciaran and his stuff. And that's been another episode of the Martial View. Make sure you check us out as well. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, give it a share. And all the best, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Welcome, mate.